Hello again, welcome back inside the Tier 4 studio here in Morgantown, West Virginia. For the Charleston Gazette-Mail, I am Mike Casazza. Today is Tuesday, which means it is time for the sometimes anticipated, occasionally relevant, every so often controversial Tuesday Taboo. West Virginia begins the final third of its regular season at home Saturday with a noon game against Texas Tech. I understand it's not equal thirds, but if you look at it, it does break down in a way that you can split it into three parts. 3-0 in non-conference play, overmatched Georgia Southern, Liberty, and Maryland. Quite frankly, made those three look like inferior teams. The Mountaineers were number 23 when they went to Norman, Oklahoma, and that began a brutal stretch in a forgettable October. Losses to Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and TCU, each of them ranked in the top 14, combined 30-1 record. October is gone, November is here. November's very different. West Virginia will play its final 5 games against teams spots 5 through 10 in the standings. This is much more the Mountaineers' speed. They are not quite good enough to be a top 4 team. They certainly belong perhaps in the upper half of the bottom of the conference, but it's also possible that they can dust off some space on the cement, sit Indian style in the basement. Time will tell on that. How they get there remains to be seen. What adjustments Dana Holgorsen or Tony Gibson make, we will learn sooner rather than later. But let's talk about the defensive side. West Virginia's offense hasn't been great, especially early. Outscored 48-7 in the first quarter of these 4 games, especially on the road, but definitely against high-scoring offenses. That is not a recipe to succeed. But more concerning than the 7 is the 48. The defense is giving up a lot of points early and then often. That is a bit of a surprise, but how it's happened is what I want to talk about today. For a long, long time now, really back until the Texas Tech game last season, Tony Gibson has made his hay by pressuring passers. Blitz, come from odd angles, affect the pocket, disrupt the throw, do whatever you can to make sure the pass is not comfortable. This can't be 7-on-7 football that you've seen the past couple of games. It's got to be more to West Virginia's liking. There has to be a chaos and a disruptiveness that, for various reasons, Tony Gibson has not been able to generate the past 2 games in particular. How is that the case? Well, injuries can't be ignored. Cannot be ignored. But however, they cannot be used to excuse everything else that happened. Whoever is on the field should be able to cover without pass interference, should be able to tackle without flailing around like a fish out of water. Things that are fundamental, that are basics, that West Virginia used to be the masters of, are no longer in their back pocket. Is it injuries? Maybe. Is it people who aren't yet accustomed to being in the field? Sure. It's not really an excuse anybody wants to use, and it's not something anybody will extend pity for moving forward. And it brings me to an odd analogy. If you've been following the blog for a while, you'll understand this. If you know baseball, you might grasp this as well. Chuck Knoblauch, you'll remember though, was a pretty good Major League Baseball player before he went off the rails later in life, but he had an odd problem later in his career. He could not make routine throws in the infield. Sailed balls over the first baseman's head. He hit Keith Olbermann's mom in the head once. That's not a joke. That actually did happen. Routine stuff he couldn't do. It just got into his head, and the simple stuff somehow evaded him. The funny thing was, he could make really tricky plays. He could dive, he could lunge, he could throw off his back foot, and that just highlighted the problem. Complex stuff he was really good at. Simple stuff he couldn't really execute quite the same. That brings me to West Virginia's defense and a Knoblauchian comparison I'd like to make for you. The past 2 games you've seen West Virginia play pretty passive. A lot of that has to do with maybe some depth problems up front, but certainly some injuries and some depth concerns in the back end of the defense. If you blitz, things have to happen fast, and you're putting your corners and your safeties on an island. You're asking them to hold up one-on-one or to play with at most 1 safety over top. You can't really afford a whole lot of time and a whole lot of thinking, a whole lot of stress, because things happen so fast. But it's also very dangerous too, especially against these receivers the Mountaineers have seen. But the reality is there has been a lot of pressure because Tony Gibson did not want to further stress, further endanger his green secondary back there. So what you've had is guys like Trevon Boykin or Seth Russell floating around the backfield, pirouetting, hurdling, juking, jiving, things like that, to earn oohs and ahs from the crowd and even low fives from Dana Holgorsen. But the reason is, it's a heck of a lot easier to succeed when you have 5 or 6 guys blocking just 3 defenders. That also makes it really hard for the people on the back end. It's harder to play coverage, whether it's man or zone, for an extended period of time. It's harder for the second level defenders, whether it's linebackers or safeties, to stay disciplined, stay in the zone, not chase the quarterback, and then open up a space for a throw that these quarterbacks have been able to find and use. So what's the deal? What's the Knoblauch comparison? The easy stuff is dropping back in coverage, playing passive, playing conservative, and just hoping that 3 or 4 people can get there. The hard stuff is that helter-skelter style Tony Gibson has been known for so long. West Virginia is really good at times, and maybe even more than at times, maybe regularly, when it is pressuring, when it is affecting the pocket, when it is stressing the passer. Maybe Tony Gibson does not have the quantity or even the quality, or perhaps some combination of both, to do that right now. But maybe these guys, whether they're backups or third or fourth string guys, maybe they would be more comfortable if they were doing what they'd seen the first and second teamers do. Maybe if Tony Gibson put whoever he has out there into the style he is accustomed to playing, maybe everybody rises up a level. Maybe they start making the off-balance throws, the behind-the-back flips, the diving stops, instead of sailing balls over the head and into the sidelines. We'll see what happens Saturday. It's worked well against Texas Tech in the past. Pat Mahomes is a mobile guy, but he's not Trevon Boykin. Maybe West Virginia is more like it was in the past and not like it has been recently. Turns up the heat, gets after the passer, makes things difficult again because that's what it knows how to do. That's it for this time. I'll see you next time. For the Charleston Gazette Mail, I'm Mike Casazza.